you have terrorists, you have smugglers, you have drug dealers, you have human traffickers all coming across the border. It begs the question, what kind of vetting have you done? If you want to open up the border, why are you letting all these bad people into my country and ruining my community?
Right, where the vice presidential candidate is from in Minnesota, that's where 25% of all ISIS recruits live.
Wow.
The point is, you go to where you are welcome.
And you make a good point about, Minnesota, that's a couple thousand miles away from the southern border. And when we've been saying for so long, every town's a border town, and Democrats didn't want to admit it, didn't want to cover it. Legacy media didn't want to cover it while Fox was covering it. Just yesterday I saw Bill Melugin post the 3-year anniversary of what he said was the craziest day on the job, and it's just a flood of thousands of illegal migrants going over the Rio Grande. It was, I'm like scared for Bill Melugin when he does that reporting, but I'm so grateful that he does it. But I also want to touch quickly on Rachel Warren. She's a woman who was murdered by an illegal immigrant in Maryland, 1,800 miles away from the border, and her mom testified before Congress yesterday. And that was what she focused on. 1,800 miles away. That's the border town where my daughter was murdered by an illegal immigrant. That's the concern of every parent. That's a nightmare scenario. And that's why it's the second top issue for voters right now, because we have no choice but to be concerned about it because of this administration's actions and subsequent inactions that have now made that one more thing that every parent in America has to be nervous about.
Well said. Do you remember when former White House press secretary
and sent more than 465 messages through a public website maintained by the court? In focus now, Carrie Urban on this breaking news, Fox News legal editor. So we're getting some more details about this, Carrie. I first of all want to hear from you on this case.
Well, we don't know yet if it is the 6 conservative justices, but Harris, as you pointed out, we do have a source telling us that we can read between the lines, and it's probably safe to assume that it is. So this got me thinking, these threats, the increase of political violence in this country is, I think, quite disturbing to all Americans, no matter which political side you fall on. But what I'm seeing is that this political violence, and at least the threats of it, seem to be continuously only directed towards one side. And that's Republicans. Those are conservatives. And we can go through some of these examples just in the last couple of years. Like specific to the Supreme Court, for example, we remember when the Dobbs opinion leaked, and what happened next? Tons of protesters showed up at the conservative justices' homes, harassing them, bullying them, intimidating them. There is a law that prevents against that kind of stuff, and it was not enforced against those protesters at the time. Brett Kavanaugh, he was almost murdered. There was an attempted murder on his life. That doesn't go to trial till next year. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is this happening? And this, of course, against the backdrop of our former president and possible future president, an assassination attempt on his life now twice. And again, so I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, why is this happening? And you have to take a look at what else is going on. You have the New York Times that is continuously running hit pieces against the conservative justices, unfairly mischaracterizing their actions, unfairly mischaracterizing the ethics rules. You have that. You have President Biden, who has repeatedly criticized the Supreme Court. The conservative wing wants to transform the court entirely because he doesn't like the decisions. You have Dick Durbin and his Democrat colleagues on Capitol Hill who are constantly calling for hearings and also slandering these conservative justices. So it's really no wonder that this is happening. But I'm hoping that people are taking a look at this and thinking, this needs to stop, and what can I do to help prevent that from happening as well?
Well, and when you talk about the rhetoric, there is kind of a commonality here, because it's something that former President Trump says is happening with him. It's the type of words coming from the very top of Democratic leadership against him, and the rhetoric calling him an existential threat. Well, what do you do with existential threats? As one congressman said, Daniel Goldman of New York, and he's since apologized for these words, saying that he used the wrong word, you eliminate someone like that. Yeah. So you're going to talk about a former president, and say, call for elimination. Again, Representative Daniel Goldman has said he used the wrong word in that incident. But you compare that to this situation, and you're telling us things that have been said about those justices. It's a lot. Words do matter.
They do, and I do think both sides could do a much better job at toning down inflammatory rhetoric. But that aside, and that is something that I think everyone needs to consider, the fact that this political violence and the threats of political violence only keep happening directed towards one side. And what's ironic is that the Democrats and their partners in the media keep waving around January 6th, like hoping no one's noticing what else is going on. You know, with respect to the conservative justices, with respect to Donald Trump. I mean, come on. You know, I think it's time for people to stop hiding behind that and have, you know, a reckoning with what actually is happening currently, which is threats and violence towards people on the right.
Carrie Urban, as the news is breaking about the suspect that they have picked up who is threatening or has threatened allegedly U.S. Supreme Court justices, 6 of them. Thank you for being with me on this.
Thank you.
How is she going to sit in a room with Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping? How is she going to sit in a room with the adversaries of America if she won't even sit down for a friendly media interview? She can't do it, and we can't trust anybody who's so afraid of her own people that she won't give an interview to actually represent those people on the world stage.
Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance appearing to press Vice President Kamala Harris to do more media interviews. Well, I don't even think she cares. Everybody's pressing for it. It's been 44 days since she announced Minnesota Governor Tim Walz was her running mate, and since then the Harris-Walz ticket has only done a combined 14 interviews. Trump and Senator Vance, who you just saw, have done 55 interviews in that same time. Axios with this headline, the Harris-Walz media strategy, hide from the press. An excerpt from that. Harris team believes limiting interactions with the press is the right strategy, even if it frustrates reporters. Bottom line, some of Harris's worst moments as vice president have come during interviews when she made a flip-flop or unclear comments about key policies. Critics want to hear more from her now on the growing number of policy reversals that she's committing. And those include fracking, illegal immigration, ending private insurance, mandatory gun buybacks. The list goes on. And check out this head scratcher from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
She's put out policies on her campaign website. Anybody who's truly interested can go and read about them. She referenced policies. She actually doesn't just have policies and concepts. She has, plans about what to do. I think it's it's a double standard, and it's a double standard that is partly because they are still getting to know her, but also because they're still grappling with the idea like, oh, am I really going to vote for a woman to be president and commander-in-chief?
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's gender, it's race, it's everything other than the merits for the job that you weren't born with. David Avella, GOPAC chairman, Doug Schoen, former Clinton advisor. I have to go to you first, Doug. You have many times been critical of how Kamala Harris is leaving lines blank on the exam of what are you going to do for the country.
And I remain critical, and I can only say Secretary Clinton doesn't help the cause of my party by ascribing it to race or gender. This is a case where she is ducking interviews because it's not in her interest. I think that there should be more debates, hopefully a debate on Fox. But bottom line, the Trump campaign has to push her to do more interviews, more debates, more combative adversarial encounters where we get to the truth, because right now, Harris, as you said, we don't know what she really believes.
And that's after 3.5 years of having some of the most important positions that the president has given her, Joe Biden, including the border, which is driving even the Fed chairman to mention the illegal immigration problem that we have with people and jobs in this country, and how he's, you got to raise the interest rates. You got to do, or not raise the rates, but cut them by 50 basis points. You got to do that kind of thing. All right. One of the VP's flip-flops is on fracking. Lawrence Jones went to Pennsylvania to talk with workers.
Kamala Harris, who's the vice president, was once against fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
She now says she's for fracking.
I will not ban fracking.
Do you believe her?
No, I believe she's out there saying whatever she can to make people, try to swing her way, so that she can try to get the presidency.
The sentiment around this whole region is nobody believes that.
I don't believe anybody in that administration.